Okay. All right. I
Shabbat
think
shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. We are, I don't know why I did all that. We are back. Um, we will be looking at actually continuing on with the narrative from last week. It's kind of a continuation of the story that we dealt with in Numbers chapter 13. The saga continues with chapter 14. So we're going to go ahead and look at that for
Numbers
our
chapter 14.
yes. I'll say everything needs to be. Okay. Yeah. You see that? Okay. We'll be looking at our weekly Midrash. And we will be looking at Numbers chapter 14.
People wept.
Again, we looked last week at chapter 13. We talked about the spies going into the land and coming out with the evil report. Um, and now we're going to deal with basically the consequences. What what has happened as a result of the people going in, seeing the land, and coming back with the evil report. So we're going to look at that in Numbers chapter 14. What we want to do probably is just read, I think. Let's just start off by reading the first 4 verses. Go ahead.
And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron. And the whole congregation said unto them, Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in the wilderness? And wherefore hath Yahweh brought us unto this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? But we were it not better for us to return into Egypt? And they cried one to another, Let us make a captain, and let us return into Egypt.
Okay, very good. Okay, so first of all, when we look at these first 2 verses here, we see something interesting with what's going on. If we remember last week when we talked about the people going into the land, and the ones who had the bad report, I don't know why he had that. The ones who had the bad report were saying that all the people were giants. All the people that they saw were giants. But we know this could not have been the case because of the fact that, well, we can assume that it wasn't the case because that report was coming from those that were frightened and fearful altogether. Well, actually, it actually could have been the case because Caleb and Joshua didn't really care what they was looking at. They was ready to just go in there on the strength of moving,
matter if
yeah,
it's
through the
giants or
power
not.
of the Most High. But we know because of the region that they named when they saw the giants, that the giants were the so-called giants were in a particular area. So it wasn't all the people that they saw. But anyway, when we look here, when we see this, and we see this mentioned here 3 times where it says, then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. Verse 2, and all the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them. So it's interesting that we see in the stretch of these 1.5 verses, this word here that's translated as all and whole, which the word is actually kol, which properly it means the whole, hence all, any, or every, in the singular only, but often in the plural sense, all manner, all together, any manner, enough, every, one, place, thing, whosoever, as many as, whatsoever, the whole, and whosoever. And the root of that word kol is kalal, which means to complete or to make perfect. So when you think about the whole of a thing, not just the parts, the complete thing that you're looking at, the perfect, the perfect representation of the thing is all of it, right? So when we look at what's going on with Israel at this time, because of the report that they received from the 10 spies, and even if we look back at chapter 13, it wasn't as if the if you look back at 13, let me see here, 13, send them in, they land. Okay, so if we look over back at chapter 13, verse 32, and they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying. So again, it wasn't as if the people were just coming back and talking to Moses and Aaron. They came back and told all the people about all the things that they had saw, or their perception of what they saw. They told all the people of all the things. And then so now, we dealing with the people. It says in the first parts that they wept. All of them were sorrowful because of the thought that they were supposed to have been going into this land full of these people who were greater than themselves, and that were probably going to kill them all. Okay, so the people grumbled. All of the people. So it talks about all the people. They lifted up their voice and cried and wept. They grumbled against Moses. And that grumbling is this word here, loon, which means to stop, to stay permanently, to be obstinate, especially in words, to complain, to be obstinate. So to be negative, right? They had nothing but negativity to say. They weren't dealing with moving forward. They were only dealing with stopping. They just wanted to just not move, right? So
they instead of flowing, they got blocked up.
They got totally blocked up, right? When we talked about the idea of Torah, and it coming from the concept, it comes from the word that means to flow like water. Torah being the character of the Most High, when we take on his character, it causes us to flow like water, right? But here with these people and there's grumbling, they just came to a stop.
I think that, like, for example, when someone's in pain, sometimes I'm thinking about childbirth. In my case, it's like I can like really get like stiff in my body. You can like you don't want to move. You just want to like sit still or get into the fetal position. You don't really want to move when you're in pain or whenever you're frightened. Whenever you're frightened, you stop. You know.
Yeah.
You might stop in your tracks and scream. But you know, it's like there's a stoppage, I guess, that happens.
Right.
When you're, you know.
Right. So this is what we see with the language, with the things that the people was saying, what they was bringing about, because they was going up into the land. They was about to go take the land. So these things, these negative things and ideas and thoughts was causing everybody to stop. Right. So this is what murmuring is. Murmuring is these negative words that's causing you not to move forward. It's just this negativity, right? It's this blockage, right? So this is what they was doing. They were grumbling against Moses. This word murmur here, to grumble, to howl. That's what kind of the dogs and wolves and things do. They howl. It's found in the books of Exodus, Numbers, and Joshua, and refers to the Israelites complaining during their escape from Egypt and their wanderings through the desert. It's interesting that we see this thing over and over again with the people murmuring and complaining and grumbling and howling in response to the movement of Yahweh through the desert.
Block the flow of moving.
Well,
through the desert.
They're exactly doing that. That's what they're doing.
Wow.
And it's a constant thing that happens over and over again. It's like the repeat. This is total repeat offense of Israel throughout the Torah. Like, this is what we see in the wilderness experience. There's murmuring and complaining going on. Right. So when we look at again the second part of that second verse, down to the fourth, where it says, "Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in the wilderness. And why is Yahweh bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt?" So they said to one another, "Let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt." There is nothing that, according to these people and what they got to say right now, there's nothing that the Most High has done correctly in the eyes of the people. Because they basically only want to reverse everything that the Most High has done up into this point. They say, would that we had died in the land of Egypt. When you think about that, to have died in Egypt means, if they had died in Egypt, it means a couple things. Maybe they never left from Egypt. Maybe they never didn't leave, and they just died of natural causes as a result of their life in bondage, right? So if they never left from Egypt, what would it have been if they would never have left? They would have just lived and died and just kept on living and dying in bondage.
And a slave, the life of a slave.
Right, but you think about the fact that the reason why the Most High came and rescued Israel in the first place was because of the fact that that was his people, and because of the fact that he heard their cry. So if he never came to rescue them, right? They would just die in bondage, but that speaks to the character of the Almighty, though.
Yeah, left them to die.
He would have just left them there. He would have just heard the cry, ignored it, and just not even responded to it. But this is the thing that Israel, that all of Israel, that the whole of Israel is putting on the Most High.
Are they saying they would rather die in Egypt? Or like, yeah, that's exactly what they're saying.
Yeah, yes. But we're talking about what would have been the circumstances behind staying in Egypt, which we're saying if Israel was to have stayed in Egypt, then you have to say that either Yahweh never heard the cry, or he did hear the cry and he didn't respond to the cry, or they were killed while they was trying to leave. So if you saying that, then now you saying that Yahweh wasn't able to finish the job that he started to do. He went to go and try to rescue Israel from Egypt, but he wasn't able to do it, and Israel was just killed. And yeah.
Well, I think they think that he's not able to finish the work he began, obviously, because they're saying they can't even go and take the land, which is the final.
Well, yeah, but they're saying it to the nth degree. Like they're saying it like on every level, starting off with dealing with them even coming out in the first place. So again, the next aspect is dealing with, and why is Yahweh bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? So now we're dealing with the fact, well, you already talking about, what if we would have just stayed back? But now you talking about why is Yahweh bringing us into the land to fall by the sword, to kill us, even though from the very beginning, the whole idea was to leave Egypt and not to go to the wilderness, but to go to the land. Like that was the goal from the beginning. So even though we dealing with, at this point, is not, they're not so far removed from Egypt, but up until this point, the Almighty, they're saying the Almighty is unable to sustain the people in the wilderness, in spite of the fact that he's already doing it.
He's literally providing them food
currently,
them
like he's literally
safety.
Currently doing it.
So they're saying that he's not. So that's why I couldn't deal with these people.
They're saying that he's not doing what he's actually in the process of doing currently.
Like he's trying to help them. He's bringing them somewhere. He's saving them. He's rescuing them. And they're saying, you're not really doing it.
You're not doing it. Or no, you're not even doing it
like
at all.
We could figure out a person.
I think a good job. I think a good job is like talking about the quality of it, but they're basically saying that he's just not even doing it. The equivalent is like if I put you in the car and I take you somewhere
like,
and I drop you off and then you're there, like, and then I'm just like, you're like, you didn't take me here. Like,
maybe we should get somebody else to drive.
Yeah.
Where you already drove.
Yeah, but and you're there already. Yeah. Like,
that's a funny point.
Okay, so that again, they're looking at this thing and nothing that the Most High has done or is doing is satisfactory in the eyes of all the people. So they go on to say that our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Plunder is this word baz, which means plunder, booty, prey, spoil, or spoiled. So, when you think about the idea of what happened when when Israel went into, when they were leaving Egypt, when they took all of the riches and stuff from Israel on their way out, they were plundering. They were taking reparations or borrowing from the people. Back. Yeah. So there's basically saying that the children and the women are going to become casualties of war. The word describes the act of plundering or the objects taken in the process. The temple was despoiled or plundered, dealing with the Babylonian captivity. Many things were taken as booty, various objects, including human beings. We look, even Yahweh's flock, Israel, became prey to evil shepherds as well as foreign enemies. So we're talking about, again, the things or the objects or the individuals that are taken as a result of the battle. Again, this is the root bazaz, to plunder, catch, prey, rob, take away utterly. So, what would really happen? What would really happen if they was to just say, well, we're done with this wilderness thing. Let's just go back. Let's just go back to Egypt.
They would die in bondage.
They would die anyway.
Die from being whipped eternally.
Well, I mean, I feel like at this point, I think it would probably be immediate death.
Oh yeah.
Because you think about what happened. You think about the fact that they went, they took from all of the people that was there, the firstborn of all of the people die. The armies, including pharaohs, they followed Israel out, and the armies perished in the sea. And then what, you supposed to go back and say, what you want to say? Well, my bad. Right. So death is the only thing that I could see that would, be what they would be facing if they was to go back. But this is what they're saying. Death is better than being out here following after the Most High in these seemingly unwinnable situations and circumstances. To them, it was a lesser of two evils um, between dealing with the inhabitants of Canaan and Egypt. So, in other words, realizing that going back to Egypt probably would mean at the bare minimum back to bondage, but probably more close in line with reality would be death.
It was like a 9% chance that they're gonna take.
Well, I don't know what kind of percent it was, but the thing is that whatever it was, they would rather do that.
They'd rather take their chance.
They'd rather do that than go and deal with the inhabitants of Canaan.
They were scared of these people in Canaan more than they were scared of the Most High, in my opinion.
And Egypt.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
it was only based. This is the crazy thing to me. It was only based off of a word from 10 witnesses.
That's interesting.
It was only based off of a word from 10 witnesses. It wasn't based off of them actually seeing the people. They heard Yahweh at Mount Sinai. And they were so scared that they said they didn't want to hear him anymore.
That's crazy.
They see this pillar, cloud, and this fire. They could literally see the power working. They saw what happened in Egypt. And they was in Egypt and they saw they witnessed all that. But they're going to, over a testimony of a minion, right? Is that a minion?
10, yeah.
10 people. They're going to just take that and be like, okay.
That's interesting. Because when you think about that, people, they put their faith in, I guess, whatever they want to put their faith in, because they wasn't really dealing with the people. I'm saying not the 10 spies, but the people that heard the message. They trusted in the eyewitness accounts of the 10 people more so than the 2 people. But neither one, I'm saying, as far as the people hearing the 10 or the 2, they had to have faith in somebody's, as you said, words. And what was it that caused them to trust in the words of the 10 people over the words of the 2 people? Because again, when we look at the track record of the Almighty, he hasn't proven to them that he was unable to do the things that he said he was going to do. In fact, he did everything that he said that he was going to do up until that point. So, he should have, the people should have been able to trust in the 2 because of the evidence that was before them, which was, they saw the 10 plagues. They heard Yahweh.
The sea in there too.
Yeah.
That should have been enough, right?
Right.
It should have been enough.
So you got the 10 plagues. You got the going through the parting of the sea, and then you got the actual voice of the Almighty. So I mean, if in the event that after the 10 plagues they was to say, well, this Moses is pretty powerful person to do all this, by the time they get to the Mount Sinai and actually hear the Most High saying, by the time they hear him saying and speaking to them and saying, I'm the one who did all of this, They really should be at the place where they're able to accept his words, but they wasn't. But look at what we looked at in the Psalms today. In the Psalm 106, verse 7, where it says, "Our fathers understood not thy wonders in Egypt. They remembered not the multitude of thy mercies, but provoked him at the sea, even at the Red Sea." Again, we look back to the Red Sea. It was another example of them coming,
Why'd you bring us out?
we're in the face of death, in something that looks like imminent danger. And here it's even closer to the wonders, but the key is that the fathers, it says, understood not thy wonders. The fathers understood not thy wonders. They there was some type of a disconnect where the people just wasn't able to understand who Yahweh truly is and what they were actually seeing. Every time he was doing something that should have been proving himself, but immediately the people was just, they just wasn't able to get it. It was easier for them to have faith in the physical.
I almost feel like even if they pick the physical person, that's they're going to be making a decision based off of their carnal mind who the person's going to be. They're going to be.
Oh, you mean as far as appointing?
Yeah, they said they wanted to appoint somebody to take them back to Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they lost their minds for a moment. They
lost their minds the whole time,
when they talked about picking somebody to take them back.
Yeah.
Especially.
Oh yeah, that's in.
I mean, didn't Yahweh say he purchased them?
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't
them.
I didn't actually put that on there. Let's talk about that, because let me see here. Let's see how I can go back to this. I was trying to go back in the slides. Okay, so yeah, dealing with the idea of, again, the fact that they were talking about appointing a leader. We didn't deal with that. We didn't deal with that aspect. The idea of appointing a leader. When we look at that word there, it's the same thing that Yahweh said whenever he was going to give them the land, Natan.
Gift.
And again, when you think about the, what's going on, again, with everything that they are doing here, it's negating what Yahweh has already done. Yahweh has already chosen Moses before he even moved, before he did anything. He chose a leader of the people before he went in to even rescue the people. So for them to say, again, they're rejecting Yahweh, and they're rejecting uh who Moses has chosen. So when we think about this, and again, we talked about delusion before, these false beliefs. Everything that they're saying is going against the actual creator and sustainer of heaven and earth. Everything that they're saying is going against the one who knows everything. And their thoughts are supposed to be better than what the Almighty is saying. It's just over and over again a total disconnect from reality. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, so here, read that right there.
Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces in the presence of all the assembly of the congregation, all of the sons of Israel, and Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh of those who had spied out the land tore their clothes.
Okay. Okay, so again, we're looking at this. It's interesting. The audacity of the people to even just think, let alone allow those words to actually come out of their mouth. However, when you don't really know Yah, that will cause you to speak out the side of your neck about him, because you have no real idea as to what he is capable of or what he may or may not do. Again, we think back to Psalm 106, verse 7, where it talks about the fact that the people did not understand the miracles. They did not understand what it was. They did not understand the wonders in Egypt. They did not understand what it was that the Most High was doing. They wasn't able to comprehend the works of the Father. But not only that, they wasn't able to understand the Father. They was not able to have that thing that is said to be the beginning of understanding, that thing that's said to be the beginning of wisdom, which is the fear of Yahweh. Right? It talks about the fact that fear is the beginning of wisdom. Right? When we think about fear, we think about this idea of fear. Fear involves having an understanding of what an individual is capable of. So the people had a definite fear of the inhabitants of Canaan. They had a definite fear of the inhabitants of Canaan, but so to them, they understood what they were capable of doing. But what they weren't understanding was what the Almighty was capable of doing. They did not have an understanding. I can't really speak to why they didn't have an understanding, because they physically saw what he was able to do. But for whatever reason, again, there was some type of disconnect that was not allowing them to put all of these things together and actually walk in the knowledge of who Yahweh was, because they were allowing their physical sight of their current situation to dictate their actions, as opposed to keeping the Most High at the forefront of their minds and allowing the Almighty to be the barometer by which they moved. They wasn't doing that, right? They was walking in their flesh and carnality, right? They did not know who Yahweh truly was. So they go through all of that. And Caleb and Joshua, they hear this, right? And they respond correctly, because they're hearing what these people are sitting up there saying, and them having the knowledge of Yahweh, them understanding who Yahweh is, caused them to respond properly, right? It says Caleb and Joshua rent their clothes. John Gill, the commentator, talks about this and says that in token of sorrow for the sins of the people, and at their blasphemy and ingratitude against Elohim, and in dread of his wrath and fury breaking forth upon them. So this commentator here is dealing with the many aspects, the many different aspects that would cause Caleb and Joseph to actually Caleb and Joshua to rent their clothes.
Because they knew that these people lost their minds.
Their ever loving minds, but they're doing it on so many different levels, right? They're speaking against the Father, right? They got this. They're blaspheming against the loving kindness of Yahweh. Yahweh has given them this wonderful gift of freedom. He chose this people over all the people of the earth, not because they was greater than the rest, but because that was his choosing. And they're saying, we don't want this. We don't want this. We don't want any of this stuff. No. We'll go back to being slaves. Matter of fact, you don't even know what you talking about. We need to choose one of our people who really knows. So Caleb and Joshua, they see all of this and they're just totally they rent their clothes. Okay, read this here. These
and they spoke to all the congregation of the sons of Israel.
Caleb and Joshua, that's what they're saying this. Okay, go ahead.
The land which we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If Yahweh is pleased with us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us. A land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against Yahweh. Rebel against Yahweh. And do not fear the people of the land, for they shall be our prey. Their protection has been removed from them, and Yahweh is with us. Do not fear them.
Okay, so looking at this, right? Okay, now we're seeing the perspective of somebody who's actually looking at this properly, right? They're looking at this and understanding that if we are on the right side of the Most High and his loving kindness, if he's pleased with us, he's going to bring us into this land. He's going to give it to us. That's what he's saying, right? This land, this land that you saw was a land that flows with milk and honey. But
and they put a proper perspective on the land because it says it's an exceedingly good land.
Right.
And don't eat up its inhabitants.
Right. There was definitely some double talk with the people as far as the land, where they out of one side they're saying that it's good, but out of the other side they're saying that it devours its inhabitants. And at some point there has to be a connection between the people and the land. And again, they had nothing but bad things to say about the inhabitants. So even though they're trying to say that it's good, they're saying that it's bad at the same time, which again is speaking against Yahweh. So the people are rebelling against Yahweh. And the people are fearing the people more so than the Almighty, where they should be understanding that those people are going to be as Caleb and Joshua are saying, those people are our prey. We're looking at it in reverse.
Shut up.
They'll be our prey, is what they saying.
You talking about we're going to be a prey to them, but really it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Wow.
Whatever protection it was that they would have had, it says, has been removed from them, and Yahweh is with us. Do not fear them.
It's like Caleb and Joshua, real chosen people. They really know who Yahweh is.
Exactly. So thinking about that, this idea of telling the people that Yah is with you is useless to those that aren't accepting the reality of the presence and essence of the Almighty. It's basically a waste of words to try to sit up here and to convince these people that Yahweh is for you when you don't even really understand who Yahweh is. In other words, I can't just go up to somebody who is struggling in a situation and say, well, the Most High got your back.
Don't worry.
Yeah, so just stop worrying. Just chill, because the Almighty, He got your back. But that person don't have no relationship with the Father. He don't have no knowledge of who the Father is, or what He's capable of. Those words don't mean anything. Like say for instance, if I am like this this person who has these tremendous combat skills, right? And there's like 5 people around, and I've been known to be able to thrash 10 people at the same time. And there's somebody, and I'm with somebody who's just totally just frightened and scared. And I'm like, chill. You don't gotta be scared. I can easily thrash those 5 people. I'm known for thrashing 10 people. But this guy that I'm with, he doesn't know about my reputation. So he's just gonna be scared of the 5 people. So it doesn't matter that I'm telling him what I'm able to do, because he only believes in what he believes in.
That's like Ari last night. She was scared of nothing. He kept telling her it was nothing.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, the idea of telling people the truth and expecting for those people to respond to what you know as the truth is actually useless, unless the people are able to actually accept the reality of the truth. There has to be a connection between the people and the truth first, before the people are able to accept anything that's in regards to the truth. So we see this going on. We see it.
So
Caleb,
if somebody is murmuring, or if somebody is blocked, like they have bitterness, or they have resentment, or they have something that they feel like they can't let go, is it worth talking to them about it, or you just let them live like that?
well, you can't say that it's not worth talking to them, but how you go about it, I think, is key. Because here we see an example of these people saying, we ain't going up there. Them people is greater than us. And then you got Caleb and Joshua saying, we can go up there. Y'all's with us. We could do whatever it is that y'all wants for us to do. But the difference is that the one people are, they are truly, they are functioning in a right relationship with the Almighty. So therefore, they have the understanding of who He is, and they're able to act accordingly. The other people, however, are not. So if I'm dealing with somebody who has these, what was the thing that you said that they had? Oh, bitterness. And I'm just saying, well, you need to just give your bitterness over to I can't just say give your bitterness over to Yeshua if they don't know who Yeshua is. If they don't have a real relationship with Yeshua, how you gonna give your bitterness to Yeshua when you don't even know who Yeshua is? Right? I'm giving you a solution to a problem, but you're not connected to the solution. So that solution is actually no good for you.
It's not your solution.
Right. So this is an interesting thing that we learn from this situation, because it doesn't matter how much you tell somebody that what the Father is able to do for that person, if that person doesn't have a relationship with the Father. The relationship with the Father comes first, and then all of these other things. look what Yeshua says over here. In Matthew, this is what Yeshua talks about here in Matthew. Where he says, hold on, where's he say that? I thought I knew where it was. Here, let me just look it up real quick. Let me see this real quick. I mean, I could quote it, but I just want to say what I'm quoting. I guess I don't know where it is.
What verse are you looking for?
Well, Yeshua says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven.
Blessed.
And then all these other things will be added unto you.
Isn't this be added to me?
6:33. Okay.
Oh yeah, that is okay. Matthew 6:33. Seek first the reign of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these shall be added unto you. Oh, when we talk about worrying about food and drink, here, let me just go up some. But if Matthew 6:31. Do not worry then, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? All of these things that we dealing with are physical problems that we deal with, the things that exist, and our issues that exist from day to day. I can't sit up there and go to that person and say, well, don't worry about eating and drinking.
So if you have a job that wants you to work on Shabbat and you know, or you can't find a job,
I can't just say, well, the Most High will work it out.
because they don't know.
Right, but when we talk about for all these, but first it says, but first seek first the reign of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. So the first thing you need to do is seek the reign of Elohim, to make the Most High, to make Yeshua Lord over your life, to have an intimate relationship with Yeshua first. And then all of your day to day, all of your regular problems and things, right? All of your needs will be met after the fact, right? But not before. You can't trust in Yahweh to do for you when you're not connected to him, right? So this is what we
or something. But you know what? I've seen people who they don't even have that type of understanding, and they will say like that he's their provider and he's going to protect them and provide for them, and they're in gross iniquity, or they're just making bad decisions.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, Yahweh's going to Yahweh's going to, you know, take me out of the bad situation that I created.
Yeah.
You know,
which again, which can be connected back to when we look at the people where they're having these delusions, where they having these false beliefs when they're putting one and one together and coming up with three, right? But again, this is an example. When we look at this, we see this is like a practical application of, you know, the necessity to have a relationship with the Almighty first.
First, then that means that you're going to be walking according to his ways, and that you're on his side.
Mm-hmm. So then now we look, right? We look, and Caleb and Joshua had all this to say, and the people say, stone them people with stones. Kill them.
The people that are actually talking right.
They tripping.
Okay.
All the congregation, cool. The whole congregation said, stone them with stones. Kill them people. They straight up tripping.
They weren't stoned, right?
No, read what happened.
Then the glory of Yahweh appeared in the tent of meeting to all the sons of Israel. And Yahweh said to Moses, how long will this people spurn me? And how long will they not believe in me? Despite all the signs which I have performed in their midst, I will smite them with pestilence and dispossess them, and I will make you into a nation greater and mightier than they.
Okay, so we look at this. The people was like, Larry, let's get stones and stone the people. When they said that, as soon as they said that, then the presence of Yahweh appeared.
They went too far.
They sat up there and started saying, we're gonna kill you for talking right. We're gonna kill you for talking right.
And Yahweh was like, hold up.
And then the Most High came and appeared just as soon as that was happening, right? And speaks to Moses, which is interesting. Because think about what's going on here. Like just think about it in a physical sense. If there's some type of altercation that happens, and the people that are involved in this altercation are, just think about it as if Yahweh was a man, right? What is happening here? The people came and they were getting ready to go and stone and kill Moses. And then Yahweh don't come and tell the people to stop. He don't come and tell the people to stop doing what you're doing. He comes and speaks to Moses in the sight of the people. That's funny to me because I feel like he is further validating the Moses. He's showing himself to be alive and true, and the people are able to witness the Most High speaking to Moses, right? But they're the ones that sitting up there acting up, and then Yahweh comes and speaks to Moses and says, "How long will this people spurn me?" To scorn, right? To abhor. Abhor is like hatred, right? To blaspheme. Despise. Provoke is another word that it uses. But we're not talking about interactions with individuals. We're talking about interactions with the Almighty, provoking Yahweh himself, despising him and his words, putting his words, his will, and his ways to scorn. This is what these people are doing. To revile, to reject. They're rejecting the words of Yahweh. The word often refers to rejecting the counsel of a wise person. This scornful attitude results in an unhappy life. People live in affliction because they reject Elohim's counsel. And this is what we see these people doing here, right? Why? Why? Because they was not able to believe in Yahweh. How long will they not believe in me? How long will they not believe in me, despite all the signs which I have performed in their midst? Again, we think back to the Psalms, right? We're said, he just came right back.
What maybe?
And Psalms again, back to Psalms 106, verse 7. Our fathers understood not the wonders, despite all of the signs which I have performed in their midst. Well, they understood not the wonders. Why? Because they do not believe in me. It says they do not believe in me. That word there is aman. Aman, probably to build up or support, to foster as a parent or nurse. Firm or faithful, to trust or believe, to be permanent or quiet. Morally to be true or certain. Hence, assurance. Established, right? To be faithful, continuance, steadfast, trusty, verified. So all these things are connected with this word aman, which is the thing that the people wasn't doing. They wasn't being firm. They was being wishy-washy. They wasn't being faithful, right? Or they didn't have nothing in them that created permanence. or quietness, stillness. They didn't have that. They was up in arms, right? They was murmuring. Aman. The primary meaning is that of providing stability and confidence, like a baby would find in the arms of a parent. That's interesting because when you look at the word Aman, you see what first? Im, which is
mother.
Right. So you see the idea there is there with the baby, the confidence and stability that the baby finds in the parent. Right. I can look over at little Ari and see that she finds security and stability in the arms of her Im. Right? So we see that with the
I think also the word comfort and stability, you think of the, or to build up, to be firm. You could think about like a fortress, like that surrounds you, protection.
right.
You know, the reason you can be comforted is because you know there's protection.
Yeah. Right. So when you think about the fact that Caleb and Joshua, they had an understanding of that fortress that surrounded them. They understood the idea of stability and support from the Almighty. They was able to they had stability and confidence in the power of the Almighty, while the other people didn't.
They have mindset of Yahweh.
Look at this in the ancient, right? Aman is the Aleph, which is the ox's head. The ox's head, the Mem, which is water, and the Noon, which is the sprouted seed, which also has the idea of continuance. So if you have the ox's head, which is strong, which is the head that is strong, and you add to that mighty, which we see with the waters. So we have the strong and mighty continuance. A strong and mighty continuance is what we see with Aman, a strong and mighty continuance. You have a continuation of mightiness and strength. That's steadfastness. That's confidence. Right? If I know that there's always going to be strength and mightiness waiting for me, when I need it, that's confidence. I'm never going to be out just without strength and mightiness. It's always going to be there waiting for me, ready to go. That's Aman. Right? So here we dealing with the fact that these people, as it says, how long will you not believe in me? Lo Aman. No faith, no belief. So you got no continuance of strength and confidence and mightiness in me being the Almighty.
I think about when you think about when people say they lose confidence in, like, do you have confidence in your like maybe a appointed official or something like that? The president loses confidence in one of his appointed officials, he gets rid of them, he fires them, he gets somebody else. Like,
right.
It's like, do we have confidence in the Most High, or do we not? If we don't, you might start trusting in your own ability, or you might start trusting in something else.
I think when we think about the idea of confidence in Yahweh, when we think about the idea of believing in Yahweh, it actually should be something that grows and grows instead of something that diminishes. I think if it ever gets to the place of diminishing, it proves that there wasn't a true understanding of who he was in the first place.
You might have thought he was a genie in a bottle or something.
Right, which is false, right? Which is
Everything
a
you want,
bad
he gives you.
understanding.
Mhm.
Right? So I'm saying that when we think about Yeshua referring to this faith as a mustard seed, right? He's referring to this seed planted, right? That grows. You know, that's what faith is. Faith is this thing that starts off small, but then it grows. Faith is something that should grow. So when we think about again what this is, this strength and this mightiness that continues, you know, it even in its definition of what it actually is something that grows. It's something that continues. If you have strength and mightiness that continues, even that is something that grows. Right? So these people were void of this, right? Lo aman. They did not believe.
It don't seem like anything Yahweh did for him was going to bring them to a place where it's going to have confidence in it.
No.
And that's why he had to start over.
Right.
Because it just was like, nothing I do for y'all is going to make y'all get this thing. So.
Right. Despite all the signs which I have performed in your midst, he did all of these things. You still not able to believe. So he was totally justified in just saying, all right, well, whatever. Because at the end of the day, he's still holding up his end of the bargain that he made to Avraham. If he just says, well, as he did say here, yeah, he could have just, that's what he's saying. I will smite them with pestilence, dispossess them, cut you off, dispossess you, and I'll make you, Moses, into a nation greater and mightier than they. Is it Barry now? Right? So we see here, again, he's speaking to Moses, and he's saying, you know, I'm just going to be done with these people because it's pointless. But go ahead, read that part there.
But Moses said to Yahweh, then the Egyptians will hear of it, for by thy strength thou didst bring up this people from their midst, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that thou, O Yahweh, art in the midst of this people, for thou, O Yahweh, art seen eye to eye, while thy cloud stands over them. And thou dost go before them in a pillar of cloud by day, and in a pillar of fire by night. Now if thou dost slay this people as one man, then the nations who have heard of thy fame will say, because Yahweh could not bring this people into the land which he promised them by oath, therefore he slaughtered them in the wilderness.
Okay, so when we look at this now, we see Moses here pleading with the Almighty. We see Yahweh, Moses pleading with the Most High, and basically trying to change the mind of Yah. If you do this, the Egyptians is gonna hear about it. They're gonna sit up here and tell everybody The Egyptians going to talk to Canaanites, right? That's what he's talking about. That and about all of these things that you've done is going to be completely obvious because it's not as if they're sneaking around in the wilderness. There's this cloud by day and this pillar of fire by night in the wilderness. Like these things is open. They can't just disappear off the face of the earth without nobody knowing about it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, wow.
All because they didn't believe.
Okay, read this part here.
But now I pray, let the power of Yahweh be great, just as thou has declared. Yahweh is slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression. But he will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generations. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people according to the greatness of thy loving kindness, just as thou hast forgiven this people from Egypt even till now.
Okay, again, we see Moses, the mediator. He's mediating between the Almighty and the people. We see a definite example of how Yeshua typifies, how Moshe here is typifying Yeshua. We see an example of how Moses is showing us, what the people need, and the role that Yeshua will play, right, as a mediator between the people and the Almighty. But what we can't say is that the Almighty needed for Moses to come and cause Moses to remember cause Yahweh to remember the character of Yahweh.
His own character.
So
What?
when we look at this, Moses is seemingly reminding the Almighty of his own character, of his own character, saying, what about your loving kindness? What about your tender mercies? What about the fact that you what does it say? Pardon the iniquity of this people according to thy loving kindness, just as thou hast forgiven thy people. Not that part. Oh, Yahweh is slow to anger, abundant. He's almost retelling that thing that he experienced. In Exodus 33 or 34, I think it is. Yahweh slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression, but he will by no means clear the guilty. It's exactly what he's saying. Visiting the iniquity of the fathers of the children to the third and fourth generations.
He's repeating what Yahweh showed to him about himself. His glory.
So again, when we're looking at this, I'm saying that when we see Moses working as a mediator between the Almighty and the people, seemingly persuading Yahweh to change his position on a situation I'm saying that this is not for the sake of Yahweh, but it's for the sake of Moses.
Mhm.
Is showing us a picture of what Messiah will do for his people, and not as if Moses is more possesses more loving kindness than the Almighty, is more forgiving or more willing to be slow to anger than the Almighty, but that this here is seems to be something that's for Moses, I would say, more than it is for the Almighty. But just looking at it, it seems as if Moses sat there and pled for the people and then changes the mind of Yah. Where it says here in verse 20, so Yahweh said, I have pardoned them according to your word.
But indeed, as I live, all the earth will be filled with the glory of Yahweh. Surely all the men who have seen my glory and my sins, which I performed,
Signs.
and signs which I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, yet have put me to the test these 10 times and have not listened to my voice, shall by no means see the land which I swore to their fathers, nor shall any of those who spurned me see it.
Okay, so we see that here Yahweh says, I have pardoned them. Salah, to forgive, pardon, or to spare, right? To spare. The people deserved the wrath of Yahweh. They deserved his wrath, but instead he says, I will forgive them according to your word.
Yahweh does show mercy.
So we see, yes, all over the place. So when we look where it says, which yet have put me to the test these 10 times and have not listened to my voice. These 10 times. According to one of the commentators, 10, this here's Barnes, 10 is a number which imports completeness. Compare Genesis 31:7. What's Genesis 31:7 say?
Genesis
31 verse 7.
31 verse. And your father hath deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but Elohim suffered him not to hurt me.
Okay, so we look at this 10 as being kind of this point. The sense is that the measure of their provocation was now full. The day of grace was at last over. However, some enumerate 10 different occasions on which the people had tempted Elohim since the Exodus. So you can either look at this as being 10 being this literal, they did it literally 10 times, or 10 being this number that's signifying a fullness. Like it's not necessarily 10 specific times, but they've reached the limit and we're just saying 10. Those that do say that it was a specific time, they say there was twice at the sea in Exodus 14:11, twice concerning water in Exodus 15:23, twice about manna at Exodus 16 verse 2, twice about quails in the 12th verse of chapter 16, once by the calf and once in the wilderness of Paran, which is the last and 10th time, which is right where we're talking about right now. So again, we have either this being the literal 10 times of them causing Yahweh to be upset as to their rebelling against him, whether it be a literal 10 times or just kind of a metaphorical 10 times, whatever the case may be. At this point, Yahweh's like, now you're going to get it.
You're done.
You getting it. Yeah. Verse 24 says, but my servant Caleb, because he had a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land which he entered, and his descendants shall take possession of it, because he had a different spirit. Because Caleb was able to actually walk in the spirit and has followed me fully, right? These things are actually to kind of connected when we deal with the idea of this different spirit, a spirit that was different than what the people were operating in. The people were operating really in their carnality, not operating in the spirit whatsoever. And we can see that because of the fact that they did not follow Yahweh fully, right? There's a connection between the spirit of Yahweh and walking in the spirit, the connection between that spirit and the and obedience, which they were not operating in. What are you saying?
But didn't they say Joshua was talking about that too?
Right. Joshua was also there. So he also will go into the land, but we see Caleb being what they say about this is the fact that because of the fact that Joshua was to be the one who was actually going to carry them in, they didn't necessarily have to keep on saying Joshua's name because Joshua was the successor of Moses. He was the apprentice. He was the one who was, closely following behind Moses. And, he was kind of like the second-hand man. So that's why they say Caleb is always the one who they're mentioning as if Joshua's not saying anything.
I mean, yeah,
but Caleb, because of the fact that, Joshua was this one who was, following so closely behind Moshe. That's why they're continually bringing up Caleb. But again, when we talk about this different spirit, what we really dealing with is this functioning in the Ruach, disconnectedness to the spirit, disconnectedness to the Almighty, and the fact that not just having this different spirit, but following the leading of the spirit fully. So this is something that we have to catch on to, because when we look over in Romans, right, there's a direct correlation between what we see as being the thing that gets Caleb this blessing of being brought into the land and his descendants possessing it, is when we look over in Romans chapter 8, where it talks about Romans chapter 8. verse 14, where it says, "For as many as are led by the Spirit of Elohim, they are the sons of Elohim. For as many as are led by the Spirit of Elohim, they are called the sons of Elohim." So there has to be you can't just be somebody who says that you have the Ruach and be somebody who considers yourself to be a son of Elohim. You has to be somebody who are actually following me fully, right? Again, that's connected back to belief and faith and amen, right? That having that that continuance and that assuredness and that persuadedness and that continual connectedness to the Ruach, where you're actually walking in his will and his ways, where you're following him fully, right? Like Caleb, like what we see right there. So
and even I would say the continuance is a present tense type of a faith, a present tense type of
not like you did it a lot of times in the past before. Yeah,
you can't say, well, I believed all these years and now I'm at a place that there's a situation I'm in that I don't believe. That belief that you had back then, when we were talking about the building, right? That belief that you had back then should build to
do not give him now. Yeah. Yes.
If you don't believe now, then the faith that you had back then,
it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
Right. Because again, where we talk about this idea here of following me fully. My servant Caleb, because he had a different spirit and has followed me fully. In other words, he could have had a different spirit, but not followed him fully. But this is the reason why. He says, what? Because you had a different spirit and has followed me fully. Now I will bring him into the land which he entered. Okay, verse 26 says, and Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, how long shall I bear with this evil congregation who are grumbling against me? I have heard the complaints of the sons of Israel, which they are making against me. Say to them, as I live, says Yahweh, just as you have spoken in my hearing, so I will surely do to you. Your corpses shall fall in the wilderness, even all your numbered men, according to your complete number, from 20 years old and upward, who have grumbled against me. Surely you shall not come into the land in which I swore to settle you, except Caleb, the son of Yefuneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. Okay, so we talk about even all your numbered men. We're looking back to when they numbered the men, right? From 20 years old and upward. So all of the people that was ready for battle, all the people that was counted for war, right? From 20 and upward, all the people that were numbered, right? Those people did not make it into the land. It don't talk about the women, and it don't talk about the children. It talks about those men that was numbered for battle. All the people who would have been affected by this whole idea of not going in and dispossessing the people. All the ones who were saying, we ain't going up there. Them people's going to kill us. All them people that grumbled would have been the armies that actually would have been part of this whole thing. They was the one who actually was rejecting Yahweh by saying we're not going up to. It was better for us to stay in Egypt.
I feel like they was ready to forfeit the battle.
They did forfeit it. They did forfeit the battle. They forfeited the battle. That's exactly what they did. And then Yahweh forfeited them. You want to sit up here and deny my power? You want to sit up here and deny my strength? And again, we talked about this last week, the unforgivable sin. These people committed the unforgivable sin.
I also think about how it's not unfair. Like some people will be like, oh, it's unfair that all of the people had to die. Well, when Tirza and her sisters came up, they said their father died in his own sin.
Right.
So these people who are being left in the wilderness, it's not like the 10 spies is what caused them to sin, because we read all the people came up against Moses.
Yeah. There
wasn't one person in that crowd who was right at that moment. At that moment, everybody was messing up.
Right. And even here, it's inclusive of the numbered men, according to the complete number from 20 years old and upward, who have grumbled against me. So all them people is the people who grumbled against Yahweh. So their sin is being mentioned right there. So it wasn't as if the 10 people went up and then they came back and said what they said, and then as a result of what they said, now all the people can't go into the land. But the 10 people said what they said, and then all of the congregation agreed with what they said and actually grumbled against Yahweh. And then now, as a result of that, the people were punished. Verse 31 says, your children, however, whom you said will become prey, I will bring them in, and they shall know the land which you have rejected. But as for you, your corpses shall fall in this wilderness, and your sons shall be shepherds for 40 years in the wilderness, and they shall suffer for your unfaithfulness, but not unto death. Those are my words, but not unto death. Right? So they're suffering as a result of the sins of their fathers. They have a consequence that's connected to the actions of what their fathers have done, which is the consequence is that there'll be shepherds in the wilderness for 40 years. So there is a suffering that's connected to the unfaithfulness of the fathers, but it's not unto death. Right? They're not dying because of what their fathers have done. They're not dying, but they definitely going to be shepherds in the wilderness for 40 years because of it, right? Until your corpses, the corpses of the fathers, lie in the wilderness.
That kind of makes me think about how, the decisions of parents can really affect children.
It definitely affects the children, absolutely. Now you're not necessarily damned to hell because of what they've done, but you definitely feel the effects of the sin that your parents have done. Absolutely. And we see the perfect example of that just right here.
Your disposition in life is your position, not disposition. Your position in
Well,
life.
it could be that. Yeah.
Yeah, like your disposition in life is based off of decisions that your parents made.
Right.
So if they sowed seeds of righteousness, the children could be set up with fruit from the parents.
Mm-hmm.
But if the parents,
well, they got fruit.
Yeah,
it's just some bitter fruit.
But if your parents sowed seeds, of unrighteousness, then they're going to be set up with a place of unrighteousness to start.
Right. So they sat up there and they now had to deal with this unfaithfulness. Right? This lack of this low aman, right? There's no stability, there's no faith, right? According to the number of days which you spied out the land, 40 days, for every day you shall bear your guilt a year, even 40 years, and you shall know my opposition. Right? So there's a sentence that's given.
This sentence is kind of interesting to me because he always said that the reason, for them being in Egypt for that time, the reason for them being in Egypt was so that the wickedness of the people would become the maximum or whatever. And then it would be time for them to dispossess the land or to take the land. And this was the time for that. So we're at the time for them to be able to go in and take the land because of the inhabitants had waxed to the fullness of their iniquity. So now it's like, okay, it's time to go in there. And the children could actually, the people actually could, they could, I don't want to say cash in, but they could reap that reward. They could reap the benefit of the relationship with the Most High. But now it's being put on hold. It's being deferred because they aren't ready. Mm-hmm. So the land is ready, but now the people aren't ready. Mm-hmm. So now we got to wait 40 years, more years, so that the people can get ready.
Yeah. So
they could be in there putting their own seeds in the ground, and they could be in the land
benefiting from the goodness of the land.
But they can't benefit from the land because they're not ready to receive the land.
So I mean, we could definitely see a direct correlation between this and some practical application, right? Because we could look and see where it's not about Yahweh's timing. Yeah. Because according to his timing, the people ready to go. I mean, the land is ready to go. It's ripe for the taking. But because of the fact that the people and their iniquity and their slew-footedness and unfaithfulness, because of that, now the timetable got pushed back. But not because Yahweh wasn't ready for the people to go in, but because the people wasn't ready to go in.
I think about that right now. Because it's like we could really be in a place to take action. We could really be in a place to move for the kingdom of heaven. But where are the people who are really ready to make the you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where are the people who are ready to go out and do the work and make it happen?
You can't necessarily sit up there and say, well, it must not be the Yahweh's time for it to happen then.
Yahweh's time for it to happen, but the people are slow.
Yeah.
They're slow to respond,
Unfaithfulness.
They're unfaithful.
Mm-hmm. This is a exact clear example of that.
Are we going to be doing? Is he going to find people working? Is he going to find people doing? He asked a question, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to come back But is he going to find us? You know what I mean? Doing the work and being active. So the time will be at hand, but is the people going to be ready?
Yeah. Exactly. So we see, as a result of all this, he says, you shall know my opposition. You shall know my opposition. That word is tenua. Tenua, which is alienation. By implication, enmity, breach of promise. Mm-hmm. Right? You'll know my breach of promise. Which is interesting, right? Because Yahweh said what he was going to do for this people, but because of what the people have done, he says, oh, yeah? Okay, so now you're going to know how this promise gets broken. You're going to know it. You're going to know how you went from being a friend to a foe, right? Enmity. You're going to know now how you went from being a one that was homeborn to one that was made an alien, right? Alienation. You've been alienated. You've been put on the outside. You've been turned into a foreigner, right? Mm-hmm. You'll know my opposition. That's what he said. Right? This word to that comes from the word to disallow, to break, to dissuade, to make of none effect.
I'm sorry, Danny. I'm like still back on the whole it's Yahweh's time. It's Yahweh's time to move into the land, and only 2 people out of everybody is ready to take the land.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Out of 600,000 and some people.
We talk about 600,000 people who was part of the census.
Yep.
Only 2 people is like ready to go to war, and only 2 people are ready to go into battle.
Yep.
And it's literally time to go in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, that's something right there. How do you move forward with 2 people?
Well, they was ready to do it. It didn't matter. That's the thing. That's the other thing, but you gotta see the flip side of it is that it didn't matter. They was ready to go. So they was always ready to go. So what we had to remember, I think what is important to be able to understand about the thought process is that, again, when we think about the walking in the spirit and walking in the flesh, walking in the spirit can be connected to being proactive, and walking in your carnal mind is reactive. So the people reacted to what they saw, and that was what caused them to not want to go up. But the 2 people that was ready to go, it didn't matter what they saw, they were still ready to go up. So they wasn't being responsive to the situation. They went into the situation with a particular thought process, and that thought process remained from beginning to end. Right? So you can't look at the situation and say, well, there's only 2, so now we can't do nothing until the rest of the people is ready, because that would just be something that would be a responsive situation. What you must say is, well, it's only 2. Well, I guess he's gonna work a more miraculous work then, because he gonna let this battle be won with just 2 people instead of doing it with a whole nation.
So the carnal would be like, well, if everybody else is done, I'm done too.
Yeah.
I can't do anything all by myself.
Right.
That's reacting to your situation. Of being proactive and saying, I'm just gonna go ahead here by myself.
Because you really not by yourself. You really with the Almighty. So then what we see, more foolishness, right? Verse 39. And when Moses spoke these words to all the sons of Israel, the people mourned greatly. In the morning, however, they rose up early and went up to the ridge of the hill country, saying, here we are. We have indeed sinned, but we will go up to the place which Yahweh has promised. OMG. Yahweh just got finished saying that you wasn't going in. So now they're like, no. We sorry. We mourn. We know that you was right. We should have just been like, all right, we're gonna go. So we just gonna go ahead and go up to the place which Yahweh has promised. Well, that's where you done messed up now, right? Because now you got this people who, again, by them saying we're gonna go up, it's not as if they had some epiphany of the strength of the Almighty. It's just more rebellion because he done already said what it was going to be, and now you still going against Yahweh. You still going against his word and what he has ordained. So nothing really has changed. Everything is the same with these people. But Moses said, why then are you transgressing the commandment of Yahweh? This is the exact opposite of what Yahweh said. When it will not succeed, because he is no longer with these people. He had already said that you will not go into the land because of your disobedience. Do not go up, lest you be struck down before your enemies, for Yahweh is not among you. Right? You will now know the opposition of Yahweh. He's not with you. He's with your sons. He's not with you no more. For the Amalekites and the Canaanites will be there in front of you, and you will fall by the sword, inasmuch as you have turned back from following Yahweh. And Yahweh will not be with you. He just point blank just tells them he's not going to be with you. But they went up heedlessly, it says, to the ridge of the hill country. Neither the ark of the covenant of Yahweh nor Moses left the camp. So therefore, that means that the Levites didn't go because the ark of the covenant didn't go.
They're still in their car now.
Yeah, and Moses didn't go. Then the Amalekites and the Canaanites who lived in the hill country came down and struck them and beat them down as far as Hormah. So we see these people had this thing that caused them to heedlessly go up. That word there is afal, which means to be elated, to be lifted up, to presume, to swell. Right? They were swollen.
Their ego puffed up.
Yeah, to be proud. Their pride caused them to go up. Right? This verb meaning to be proud, to presume, it describes carrying on an act of presumption, arrogance against the best advice. And then it even gives the scripture that we just looking at in Numbers 14:44. Right? It refers to a person who has become too audacious or proud. Pride.
That's kind of like against best advice.
Mm-hmm.
And we know people who go against best advice
Right.
all the time.
Yeah.
You say to them, don't marry that person because, you know, of such and such and so and so. Or, you know, this is a bad decision that you're making because of such and such and so and so. You can show them evidence and they still make that decision and still fall into those traps going against the best advice. So Moses says, don't go up. Yahweh's not with you. And they go up anyway.
Yeah.
And then they find out for themselves.
Yep. Okay, so you said all that.
I mean, we didn't change from
To
this
say
time.
That's where people is at.
We still do the same thing.
That's where people are. And we
What
see
is wrong
here's
with us?
something that sums it all up right here.
What is wrong with us?
We look at Proverbs 16, 17 through 20. Something that sums up everything that we see, the problems that we saw in this Numbers chapter 13. Numbers chapter 14. Proverbs 16, 17 through 20. The highway of the straight is to turn away from evil. He who guards his life watches over his way. Before destruction comes pride, and before a fall, a haughty spirit. Better to be lowly in spirit with the poor than to divide the spoil with the proud. He who acts wisely concerning the word finds good, and blessed is he who trusts in Yahweh. So we see when we look back, we see this, right? We see the fact that those who didn't trust in Yahweh were not blessed. The opposite was true. They was cursed, right? They were lacking in trust. They were lacking in that ability to be persuaded and to be convinced of the power of the Almighty. And they wasn't able to be steadfast and manifest the continuance of might and strength from Yahweh, right? They wasn't able to trust in Yahweh, so they did not go into the land, right? And then those same ones who wasn't trusting in Yahweh was trusting in their own strength and ability, which it was never about their own strength and ability to begin with. And they go up in there with their pride and they fall. So we see all of these things when we look back. We're able to go back and look at Israel and look and understand what we should be doing and what we should not be doing, right? When we operate in our own pride, in our own carnal mind, there's nothing that could come from that but destruction. When we get to the place where we feel that we're able to just do whatever we feel like we're able to do, in spite of the fact that Yahweh is saying, don't do that, we end up in the same place that these people ended up.
See, and this is also an example of like when we talk about sometimes things in and of themselves aren't sin. Like when we talk about covetousness or whatever, lusting or whatever, just having a strong desire for something. If it's not inordinate, it's okay. If it's permitted, it's okay. But if it's not okay. We talk about matzah, like for unleavened bread. Eating bread that's leavened is fine, but during unleavened bread, it's not fine. So going up and taking the land and dispossessing these heathen people that wax to the maximum iniquity, and the land is spewing them out. When Yahweh permits it, and when he says it's time, that's fine. But whenever he says it's not time, it's not fine. So it's kind of like, understanding and knowing and being connected to Yahweh and understanding when it's permitted and when it's not permitted, when it's time and when it's not time.
Right, which will be connected to the whole idea of, where it talked about Caleb, where he followed Yahweh fully, where he was connected to the Ruach, and he was doing what the Father was saying to do.
When.
Right. So there's a difference, right? We should be able to know when the Almighty is saying to go and go when he's saying go. But if he's saying stop and we still saying go, that's pride. That's us following our own mind and our own thoughts and what we think we should be doing, right? But this verse in Proverbs say, who acts wisely concerning the word finds good, and blessed is he who trusts in Yahweh. But again, when we talk about that trust, it's a continual thing, right? It's an ongoing process.
You're moving with the cloud. You're moving with
yes,
Yahweh.
it's current. It's present. It's right now. You're moving when he is saying to move, not like you moved past tense when he said move before. Like that. That is your present situation. And we have to be able to get to the place where our present situation is about faith. Our present situation, where we are currently right now, is walking in the Ruach. Not, that's something that you did before, or that's even something that you mostly do, right? It has to be a situation as to where that is your everyday, that is your current status. Your current status is faith. Okay. All right. So that being said, any thoughts or comments before we be done with this? Okay, so that being said, we will go ahead and be done for now and say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.